Hey there, Variety here. Welcome to today's video in which we're going to be doing a class guide for the Barbarian fighter for Tarisland. This class is much sought after as I've been getting many messages asking me when this particular guide will be uploaded, so you'll be happy to see that it is finally done. The Barbarian fighter is a melee range DPS that does both DPS spec and attack spec. Before we go into our usual rotation and PvE fights to show you both two specializations, there are two things that I want to nail on the head. First off, if you open up your character and look at Beast of Sanity, it tells you here that if one of your energy types, I will always call your stacks energy or stacks to make it easier to understand. But if one of your stacks are higher than the other one, significantly bigger than 30, your damage will be reduced by 15%. By the energy, we're talking about these things here. So when I hit a dummy, so the energy is going up. If one energy is too high over the other one, your damage is going to get reduced. So you need to, keep an eye on that. It may seem a bit straightforward at first because, the class is a little bit more simple than some of the other ones, but that one does make it a bit more difficult. The second thing that I want to talk about is that some people would feel that melee DPS might not necessarily be welcome into raids. That is a fair statement because there are a lot of bosses that don't do well with, melee DPS. However, the Barbarian has an ability which shares stats with other people in your raid party. So it makes it extremely valuable. It's actually one of your talents right down the end of the tree. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the DPS spec, and then we'll do the tank spec a little later in the video. So our favorite boss is a little bit tired today, so I figured that I would try it out on a different boss for today. So here is the DPS spec. Basically what we're going to do is your 1 key is going to give you red energy, and your 2 key is going to give you blue energy. As I mentioned before, you want to try to keep them even. Once you've got enough of both energy, then you can use your 3 key to use Wrath of Thunder. So it's basically save energy, burst, and then use your burst from your 3 key. Keep in mind that, while that may seem extremely simple, the talents will change a bunch of things. Like, for example, depending on which energy type you have more of, you'll have more combo or you'll have more damage. You also want to, use your burst on top of your echo stacks, which proc at 15, and then you want to combine it with your inscription to do maximum damage. So while it's technically possible to go into a fight and click 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, that will work initially. Once you start getting to higher content, you need to understand how the echo stacks work, and you need to understand inscription. A lot of that stuff you're going to learn in-game because it's not something you're really going to learn within the first 10 minutes of watching a gameplay video. Okay, so we're going to run up and use Wrath of Thunder, and then we're going to use Earthquake. Actually, we're going to do it the other way around. So Earthquake is going to give me, as you can see there, combo and combo damage. It also gives me energy. Fill up an energy. And as you see, I use 3 again. So here we have our AoE ability. And then here we have I call it damage multiplier. But it also, what it does is it makes your wind strike here, it makes it give twice as much red energy. So you need to be aware of that, right? Because if you're using Bloodlust and then your wind strike gives you too much energy, you're going to lose damage because you have too much red. So your Bloodlust also makes it so your second ability, Axe Thunder here, doesn't have a cooldown. So you can actually spam it as much as you want. Basically what you'll be doing is using these two to do, damage with it. And you're going to try to get your energy up. I want to actually catch up to these bombs. See how it has no cooldown? I can immediately use it again. Unfortunately, this is the downside. I'm glad this happened. So this is the downside to melee DPS, right? I'm running my big buff and I want to do my damage, and the mobs are walking away from me. It's extremely annoying. Here we have Wind Strike or Axe Thunder. It decreases the cooldown and gains extra energy within 6 seconds. Watch this. So that's your inscription. So now you should be able to see why you should be using your inscription on top of your echoes. Your echo is going to buff and give you, it's going to proc and give you buff so you do more damage. And then use your inscription to get maximum energy and you keep unloading Wrath of Thunder. As I mentioned, it will seem very straightforward, and it is to a point because you're mainly using 3, keys in rotation. But your talents and essays and other things will definitely make it a little bit more complicated, and a lot of fights are more about dodging mechanics and doing things correctly than it is, clicking 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that covers the basics of the DPS spec for the class. So next up, let's go and have a look at the tank spec. So we're now going to have a look at the tank spec. So your 3 main abilities are going to be 1, 2, 3 as per usual. Your 1 ability, so these abilities are going to change quite drastically depending on your talents and essays and stuff like that. So keep it in mind, they're not always going to work the way I explain it right now. So basically, when you use your 1 key, it's going to give you resistances and it's going to give you runes. So the runes fill up this meter here, as you can see. The second ability, if you change your ability for the other one, it'll give you damage resistance. If you use this one here, it will give you HP. This is really good because some abilities on some of the tanks heal you based upon how much attack you have, which you don't want. You don't have a lot of attack or tank. This is by your max HP, so it's actually really good. So every time you hit 1, it's going to lower the cooldown and 2 watch. So I've lowered the cooldown, so you spam 1 to get 2, and then you spam 1 and 2 to get your runes. Now my runes are full. I use my big ability, which uses up my energy and gives me a shield and damage reduction. So basically go back to 1, 2 and getting runes up. This is my AoE, this is my buff, and here is another buff. Unfortunately, they just killed that a little too quickly because, as you can see, a huge DPS come into this dungeon for some reason. But basically, AoE, this is really good. The AoE feels a lot easier to use than a Paladin one. So when it comes to luring mobs in a dungeon, it actually may be better than the Paladin now that I think about it. The final 2 abilities are basically damage multipliers, and when I get out of this cart, we can have a look at the inscription. So the inscription is something that's actually more important than it may originally seem. So it's not something you're going to use all the time, but as you get higher into your inscription tree, you can proc your inscription more often and it becomes more powerful. So in this mod pack here, I'll show you what it does if it's highlighted. Unfortunately, it's not. So what it does is increases the efficiency of gaining energy for 6 seconds and converts damage into healing. So basically, you can get your energy real quick to keep proccing the Frost Strike. So as you can see here, I'm using the AoE quite often. You can't really do that with the Paladin. So you go 1, 1, 2, 3, get your shield up. Your shield, you must keep in mind that it takes 1.5 seconds for it to activate to get your shield. So if a boss is doing a big mechanic to you, you either have to pre-do it or you have to be, right on the money to be able to actively get it. Okay, let's get my shield up. Unfortunately, that's going to run out before I get to the next mob, but that is pretty much the basics for the tank class. I do apologize that this was a little bit difficult to do because the huge DPS did join my dungeon, but that should cover the basics of what you need to know for the tank. Be sure to check out the spreadsheet because there will be much more information about, the talents and how they change what you're doing, because I can assure you that while, you know, some of the tank classes may seem 1-2-3, 1-2-3, by the fact that I have played the Paladin tank quite a lot, I've cleared almost all of the content available on China right now, and there is a lot more to it than 1-2-3. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching.